Welcome to a full review on the 2022 Ford Expedition. This is the XLT trim, but don't worry, I'm going to mention the other trim levels in this video, and that way you'll be able to make an educated decision on which vehicle is right for you and your family. And towards the end of this video, I'll tell you how to take between 4 to 8% off MSRP on a brand new Ford if you're interested in ordering a Ford and you're willing to wait, and I'll talk more about that towards the end. But for right now, let's talk about what's new for 2022. Okay, the biggest change for 2022 is going to be this new 12-inch screen in the interior. You also have an option of getting a 15.5-inch screen, which I don't recommend because it's a vertical setup, but more on that during the interior segment. But for right now, what you need to know is the base screen that you're going to be getting here is a 12-inch unit, and they pretty much did this so they can remain class competitive, and in fact they wanted to exceed the Chevy Tahoe, which provides a 10.25-inch screen. Other things to note, we have some new trim level options like the new Timberline, I believe it's called. Essentially it's a off-road spec of the Expedition if you're interested in that. In fact, the Explorer also comes in a Timberline model as well, and the Timberline has a 10.6-inch ground clearance. But I'm going to mention another model here known as the Stealth Performance, which is a variation of the limited trim, which is one trim above the XLT. Both the Stealth Performance and the Timberline models come with a high output twin turbocharged V6 unit. So the engine is essentially the same throughout the entire lineup. However, it's the tuning that's different, and both the Timberline and the Stealth Performance get a 440 horsepower, 510 pounds-feet of torque variation of this EcoBoost V6. But as we're about to see in the driving segment, that's totally not necessary because this XLT regular twin turbo V6 is more than enough, and this produces 380 horsepower and 470 pounds-feet of torque. However, the regular limited trim, the King Ranch, and the Platinum, they all have a slightly higher tuned version of this engine, which produces 400 horsepower and 480 pounds-feet of torque. So I think the good thing about these engines, including the XLT, the base model, compared to the high output version, is the fact that you can put 87 octane in this vehicle that I'm testing here. But when you go for the Timberline or the Stealth Performance, you actually have to use premium fuel. So those are your main changes. Let's transition into this exterior now. So one of the things you have to keep in mind, especially compared to the Tahoe, is the fact that this kind of body style of the Expedition, it's been around since 2017, so this is about 5 years old now. It's probably due for a redesign, maybe for the 2024 model year, but we're not sure about that. Whereas the Tahoe and the Suburban, the Yukon, the Escalade, all of those vehicles got a full redesign in 2021. So that's going to be the newest type of vehicle in this segment. But you know, the Ford Expedition, for the most part, it's always had a pretty low-key look and demeanor to it. It's stealth wealth, right? Because Ford is one of the most favorite brand of vehicle driven by millionaires in the United States. There's 21 million millionaires throughout the entire United States, and there's 1,700 millionaires being added every single day. A good amount of people that are very wealthy, and you know, those people, most likely they worked a job for 30 years and have a fully funded 401k, right? You know, paid off home. So people buying stuff like the Expedition, the F-150. The F-150 is the most commonly driven vehicle by millionaires in the United States. However, the Expedition, you can think of it as like an SUV version of the F-150, right? Roughly. And I think a lot of those people, you know, they're not rappers, they're not singers or entertainers or movie stars, so they kind of like the low-key nature of this. I will say the Tahoe is way more baller and has a more diplomatic look and appeal to it, and I personally really like that, and I personally really resonate with that. And this has none of that swagger. It doesn't even... You can't even mistake this as a cop car because the police don't use the Expedition in the United States. They use the Explorer, right? You're really buying this for the function and not for its looks or its appeal or to show off in front of other people. The XLT trim, this is exactly what I recommend people to buy. This is the exact trim level, the spec, the options, everything about this. It's exactly what I would recommend. The sticker's for around $68,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but again, you know, this is driven by extremely wealthy people that typically pay cash for vehicles like this. So the reason why I recommend this XLT is because, well, we have here the high package. I don't even know what it's called, but it's like the 302A high package. Whatever the hell it's called. This thing's got it, and that's definitely worth getting because it certainly gives you some niceties like a wireless charger, heated steering wheel, a couple of other things, which I'll discuss in more detail during the interior segment. And 4x4 is a must. That's another thing that you absolutely have to get with the Ford Expeditions, in my personal opinion. We also have your 20-inch wheels, which I don't really recommend because honestly, when I saw these 20-inch wheels, I thought they were the 18s. They look so dumb on this car. It looks like Walmart hubcaps. I do not like the way these 20s look. It's not doing this vehicle any justice. It costs like $1,100 to even get these wheels. The regular 18-inch wheels, when I was on the Ford website, they look better on this car. It has like this two-toned silver and black finish to it. And it's going to help this vehicle ride a little bit better as well. Plus, they're free. So that's what I'm going to get if I was interested in the Expedition. The reason why I wouldn't consider the regular base model is because that only comes with 5 seats. And the way you see it here for this XLT model, we have here a 7-seater configuration, if you will. And I believe it's called X Active for the seats. So we have that material here as well. So it makes it a little bit easier to clean. Very comfortable, mind you. But yeah, for the most part, the looks are very conservative. If you like that, then go ahead. I mean, I feel like most people buying this, they've probably had an Expedition in the past, and they are just buying a new one, I guess, to replace their older one because they're very brand loyal. So enough of that. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into this driving segment now. The reason why you don't need a higher trim level of this vehicle is because this engine is absolutely flying. One of the things you have to keep in mind is this annihilates just about any engine that the Tahoe comes with. Now, when I tested the Tahoe, it came with the 6.2 liter V8. It was a fully loaded high country trim. But I assure you, this XLT twin turbocharged V6 unit is way quicker than that V8 found in the high country that I tested. Ford has been making this engine for a long time now, and they have really gotten this thing down to a science. This engine is so smooth, it's so silky. It's far superior to the Lexus LX600 and the Toyota Tundra that I tested. Their twin turbo V6 is complete trash compared to this. And their 10-speed transmission, that's also, it doesn't hold a candle to what Ford is now doing. Now, don't get me wrong. Their EcoBoost engine, their 10-speed automatic, it used to suck in the past. So if you had like a 2017 Expedition, I feel like that's not going to be anywhere near as refined as this. The 10-speed transmission, these shifts are imperceivable. Like, you can't even tell this thing is shifting. It's so fluid. It's so wonderfully designed. So, you got to give credit where credit is due. Ford really does improve these models year after year. And this engine really shines around town because this thing has a colossal amount of torque, which essentially none of the Tahoe engines can compete with, because the Tahoe engines, aside from the diesel, I believe, they're all naturally aspirated, right? Naturally aspirated V8s. They don't have like this low-end grunt that this has. It just effortlessly surges off. But I will say this, it's not fuel efficient, especially when you drive like this. When you're really foot to the floor, really enjoying this engine. And mind you, the stability at high speeds is amazing as well. And the thing weighs a lot too. It's like 5,300 pounds. It ranges between 5,300 to 5,700 pounds depending on whether you get the 4x4 or the max version of this. So that's kind of the reason why the weight is so drastically different. There's that range there. But as I was mentioning, the fuel economy is going to suffer greatly. So I'll tell you the range that I've been able to pull off here with this car. It can do 16 in the city if you really baby it. But if you drive it the way I do, kind of actively passing people, not necessarily foot to the floor or anything, but surging by people, then you're going to be getting around 14 in the city. And when you're really driving it like an animal, expect to get 12. So 12 is really the worst case scenario with this Expedition. But engine performance, you're not going to be disappointed. It's better than most of the engines on offer from Chevy. Ford also does a great job tuning their larger vehicles to feel small, if you will. I said the same thing about the F-150 as well. Even though these are massive vehicles, they're so easy to drive and place out on the road. The visibility is fantastic. But most importantly, when I say that this Expedition handles well, I don't mean that this thing handles like a Ferrari or a Porsche GT3. That's not what I'm saying at all. I mean, people can be so obtuse, sometimes they totally miss the point. What I mean by a 3-row SUV handling well is when I take everyday corners in this, left-hand turns, right-hand turns, this thing doesn't flip over onto itself. The occupants, they stay neutral. They're not toppling over each other, right? You're not getting car sick, right? And that's a great feat to pull off because this is a body-on-frame vehicle that comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, being body-on-frame, it's great for towing. In fact, this also tows 900 pounds more, I believe, on average than a Tahoe, which the Tahoes, on average, they pull between 8,400 pounds, and this tows 9,300 pounds if you get the tow package, which I recommend you doing. It costs about $795. Definitely get that. Even if you don't tow, when you go to sell this vehicle, the next person will appreciate the fact that you got that option, because that's what enables this vehicle to have its best-in-class towing figure. And I found out that a lot of people were complaining about the steering feel in this Expedition, and I found that absolutely comical because one of the first things that I actually noticed and appreciated was actually the steering feel of it. I loved how effortless and easy it is to whip this thing around. It's so light. It's so easy. It's one of the easiest big vehicles to drive. It feels easier to drive than the Tahoe. It handles better than the Tahoe. However, the Tahoe / Suburban, they do ride better than the Expedition. I'm not saying that this rides terribly. In fact, I'm pretty impressed with it, considering the fact that it handles so well. But the Tahoe definitely does have an edge over this in terms of ride quality, especially since this has 20-inch wheels, and the Tahoe I tested had 22-inch wheels on it. Now, sure, it had the adaptive variable suspension crap on it, but that doesn't make as much of a difference as you might think it does. I think the higher trim level versions of the Expedition can also be had with some type of a adaptive variable suspension, but it doesn't really matter. My only complaint with this ride quality is you feel some of the smaller bumps a little bit more. And that's not a big deal considering the fact that this is body on frame, but Chevy has done a better job of isolating out these bumps. But it's also, this is an older architecture, right? This is a 2017 model year car, for this generation. That's when it started. And the Tahoe is all new, right? So I believe if you got the 18-inch wheels, it can ride over the smaller bumps a little bit better. And that's one of the main reasons why I suggest you not going with something like the Stealth Performance, because you don't need any more power. That's going to come with a stiffer suspension, which this does not need. It's going to come with 22-inch wheels, which again, all of those things are going to deter away from the ride quality of this. These 20s, you can absolutely live with it. If you wanted to get the limited, so you can get the 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen and a few other niceties, then you can absolutely get the limited if you want these 20-inch wheels. They don't ride that bad. So this is around 68 grand, and a limited is going to run you about 73 grand, so about 5 grand more than this. But I want the better ride quality, and I want to save that 5 grand, so I'm going to go with the XLT 4x4 18-inch wheels with the 302 high package, whatever the hell it's called. That's going to be my way of speccing out this Ford Expedition. But other things like refinement, absolutely fantastic. This thing has double pane glass in the front, not in the rear, but the glass in the rear is still pretty thick, and there's hardly any wind noise with this. Yeah, sure, once you get up to the highway speeds, you'll notice some of that wind buffeting kind of come through, but totally acceptable and normal for a vehicle of this type. 95% of the time, this is so quiet and isolated. I absolutely love it. But before I get into the interior segment, let's talk about some of the competition here briefly and what else you can get for your money. I'm going to do a dedicated versus video between this and the Tahoe for around 70 grand, which is what this is, right? Nearest makes no difference. What else can you get? Well, you can get a lot of the European vehicles as well. You can get things like the Audi Q7. You can get BMW X7 is going to be a little bit more money, closer to 80 grand, and the Mercedes GLS is going to be 90 grand. But those are European vehicles, very prestigious. But I get it. If you're shopping for this, you might not want that prestige and the attention that comes with. But the Audi Q7 is pretty impressive. I mean, that thing tows like 7,700 pounds, and it's going to be ultra smooth, ultra quiet. And for 70 grand, that's going to be almost fully loaded, actually. You also have some new entries like the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. that's something else to consider. Obviously, you have the Tahoe trio. And when I spec'd out a Tahoe, for 2022, they've added the 6.2 liter V8 to more trim levels of the Tahoe and the Suburban. So you can get an RST 6.2 liter V8 for around 70 grand. And I'll be honest, that thing has way more swagger. It looks way cooler than this Expedition. That's kind of my personal pick, if I'm going to be honest with you. And actually, even within Ford's own lineup, you also have the Lincoln, the Navigator, which is like the more luxurious version of this. Lincoln is honestly pretty, it's pretty overlooked. Not too many people ever think about buying a Lincoln. Which is kind of a shame because it's truly like a better version of every Ford. I mean, noticeably better than every Ford. It's a little bit quieter, a little bit smoother, and the infotainment is the same, but it looks way better. It looks way nicer, if you will. When I spec'd out a Lincoln Reserve Navigator, it was like 96 grand, and at that point, most people will just get the black label, and that's going to be a little over 100 grand, $110,000. So this is definitely a lot cheaper than a Navigator. I mean, it starts at 80 grand, and an Expedition is going to be fully loaded at around 80 grand. Not that you need a fully loaded Expedition, I'm just letting you know, right? Definitely a lot to consider there, a lot to think about. What would I personally get for around 70 grand? I would get a certified pre-owned S63 AMG Benz. I mean, that's what I would. Sorry, you're asking the wrong guy. I don't care about none of these SUVs, I'll be honest with you. This is not my demographic. This is not my lane. I don't care for any of these things. You have to really be like, you have to actually have a family, first of all. You have to be really involved in the sports and the PTA, PSA meetings, whatever, parent-teacher night. You're at all the school games and everything, and you're picking up other kids and you're throwing them back there. That's who this is for, a very active parent and somebody that does a lot of road trips. And you need to hate minivans to buy this as well, because let's be honest, you can get like a Toyota Sienna for like 45, 50 grand. It's a hybrid, it gets 40 mpg, and it's much easier to fit lots of people in that than it is in a SUV like this, right? And another thing, I'll end off on this before we get into the interior segment, the safety. So I haven't seen, or I don't think IIHS has updated the safety for the 2017 and up Expeditions. So I don't think they've crash tested this, but based on what we know about the Ford F-150, well, the Ford F-150 is an all-aluminum body, and that thing is a top safety pick from IIHS. So you can assume the Expedition is also going to be an extremely safe vehicle. So I don't think you have to worry about that. The other advantage compared to this with the minivan is the fact that this actually tows a lot. So you're an active family guy, and you also are, or a family woman, and you tow a lot. That's really the best use case for this Expedition. So with all of that established, let's go ahead and let's transition over into this interior segment now. All right, let's climb inside the interior of this Ford Expedition. But before we do, we have this side step here implemented into the side of the vehicle, which I really like. It makes it very easy to get in and out of this vehicle. I think if you get a higher trim level version of the Expedition, you can get like one of those power folding in and out type of steps, which is totally unnecessary. I don't care for that. But you do have the easy keyless entry, right? Just kind of put your hand behind the handle and it'll open up for you, and then you just press this to lock the vehicle. You also have another feature here. This is kind of unique to Fords and Lincolns, where you can program password type thing to just press that and then get into the vehicle that way. Just an extra little security touch that Fords typically have. This is your door panel. Nothing really interesting or unique to look at. Predominantly a plastic interior, as we're about to see, but I do like this door handle design. It's very elegant. Three-way memory seats, lock and unlock. We only have one touch up and down windows for the front two windows, not for the rear windows, so that's kind of unfortunate. You have your mirror controls right here, door pocket space, and we have the 6-speaker audio system, which actually sounds really good for what it is. Well, before we climb inside, let me show you the seats here. So we have this, I believe they call it X Active. I think that's what the material is for this XLT. This is optional. Otherwise, you would get cloth seats. I really do like this material. It's very easy to clean. It mimics leather pretty well. And as you can see, it's really like soft and squishy. So very comfortable seat. You have plenty of lumbar support as well. So on a long trip, this is great. If you have kids, it's also fantastic. Easy to clean, looks decent. This is your lumbar support right here. You know, kind of recline your seat, move it forward and back, whatever you need. Because we have like the 302 high package, whatever the hell it's called, we have electronic tilt telescopic steering wheel. Otherwise that would be manual. Now let's get inside, start the vehicle up, push button start. This is all new for 2022, this 12-inch screen, which I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I was mentioning the 6-speaker audio system in this vehicle. You know what? It actually sounds pretty excellent. And it doesn't sound amazing, don't get me wrong, but the reason why I'm mentioning this is because in the past, Ford audio systems used to be trash. Even the Bang & Olufsen's that you found in like the 2019 Raptors, they sounded terrible. And this 6-speaker actually sounds decent. The clarity's not bad, the bass is there. For most families, you'll be pretty happy with this, but if you got the limited trim level, that will come with the 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen, and the higher trim levels come with a 22-speaker Bang & Olufsen. I haven't listened to those systems. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're vastly improved compared to what Ford was doing in the past, but I'm fine with the 6-speaker that this vehicle has to offer. I think it's pretty appropriate for what this is. Now we have this center screen here, which shows you some, you know, good information like your MPGs and whatnot. Tire pressure is really high in this. That is probably one of the reasons why this kind of rides a little bit firm over the smaller bumps. So always check your PSIs on your tires. It should be way less than that, maybe like 38, 36 for a massive SUV like this. I'll have to check, but so it kind of shows you your power distribution, which wheel has the most power at any given moment. It'll kind of show you that. So, you know, nothing too crazy. You've pretty much seen this in other vehicles as well. And you have a very simplistic tachometer and speedometer here as well. When you put the vehicle into drive, this is another thing I really like. This is such an elegant and simple solution to the massive gear shifter knobs and the column shifters. I absolutely despise column shifters. They're so clunky and pointless. This is a much better setup, similar to what Ram does. But anyway, when you put the vehicle into drive, it shows you what gear you're in right here. So when you put the vehicle into park, that goes away. You also have a manual mode, so you can press this button, and I think you have to use these two buttons here to shift gears. Totally worthless. There's no paddle shifters on this vehicle, nor does this car need it. Just leave it in drive, leave it in comfort or normal, whatever it is, and just cruise in it, man. You'll be more than satisfied with what this vehicle has to offer. You have some buttons here on the steering wheel. So on the left side, you have your volume controls, your cruise control buttons are right here, and your track selection buttons, your Bluetooth calling, and your menu buttons and everything for your center gauge cluster, so you can play with that. Here's your wiper controls right here. Just kind of turn that dial. You also have your headlight controls right here. Just leave it in automatic and you're good to go. You can actually press this button and it'll put down the third row headrests, which I actually have the third row down for right now, and I'll put them back up and I'll show you that later. But very useful button, helps with your visibility. You can drop down the headrest with that button. You can open up the trunk here. That's your electronic parking brake, and this vehicle does have the electronic pedals. So I guess because this is the higher XLT model, it kind of comes with that, but it wouldn't come with that as standard with the regular XLT model. Here's your trailer assistance and everything. All those features are right here. Other things to note, I'm not really a huge fan of the solidity of this interior space. So I noticed a lot of creaks and rattles when I was going over some bumps. I mean, yeah, it's a predominantly plastic interior space, and that is causing this vehicle to, you know, make those noises when going over bumps. And let's talk about the center screen, because that's the main highlight with the 2022 Expedition. So 12 inches, love it. This is a great infotainment system, very easy to use, responds really nice, pretty crisp. Now, it's nothing special to look at, I admit. Like the Chevy infotainment does look a little bit nicer, a little bit crisper, but whatever. I mean, this is so easy to use. It's so intuitive. There's no learning curve with it. You can get used to it right away. But here's something very interesting about Ford's Sync 4, right? When you go to send feedback, if you have an issue with your infotainment, you can actually send feedback back to Ford. And if enough people, I guess, share the same complaint, then I guess Ford will roll out an update for you. So that's something to note. You also have Wi-Fi or like a hotspot capability with the Ford Expedition. You get that as standard, so that's nice to note. And you also have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The reason why I don't really recommend getting the higher trim levels is because with the higher trim levels, that will come with a 15.5 inch screen, which sounds great, but what you have to keep in mind is that's going to be a vertical screen, and it's the dumbest thing. I have no idea why Ford does this. It's nothing like Volvo's vertical screen or how Tesla does it. It's nothing like that. It's a very dumb system that they have. So stick with this horizontal screen. It's brilliant. I really love it, and it's kind of integrated with the dash. So well done there. I'm glad Ford made this standard. And this is larger than the Tahoe screen because the Tahoe comes with a 10.25 inch screen. I also like the fact that you get these physical buttons down here, and I'm assuming these buttons would go away if you got the 15.5 inch screen. So I love the physical buttons. I love how the climate control is totally separated from the screen. You have your heated steering wheel, heated seats, and cooled seats as well in the front. Now you have these features here because this is the XLT with the higher trim level package on it, which I recommend because these are some great features to have. Now you open this up, the wireless charging, that's also not standard with the XLT. This comes with the higher package. I will say it's kind of difficult to put my phone into that tray to have it charge, but whatever, at least you have it. And you also have a USB and the USB-C. You have two kind of standard size cup holders, and here's your drive mode selection. So I didn't really talk about this during the drive because it doesn't matter. At least this animation reacts a little bit quicker for 2022. In the past, it would take forever for this to load up. But you have all these different modes here. I'll be honest, just put this thing into the normal mode. Everything will be fine. But if you put into the sport mode, that's when the 4x4 shift, that's when that takes place. And the vehicle just maintains a lower gear for longer, and it's just not necessary and just totally detracts from the driving experience. This vehicle reacts so well in the normal mode that you don't need to worry about it. But here's your 4x4 controls right here. Center armrest is absolutely massive. You have this little tray here with your coin holders and everything. Put a wallet right there. But as you can see, the space is so deep, it's massive. You can put just about anything you need right there. And I like the fact that you have two kind of glove boxes. Very smart. Really appreciate that. You have your 12 volt right here. And as I already mentioned, the seats are extremely comfortable, no problems. And they should last a pretty long time. Easy to clean, all that good stuff. You have a tray right here to maybe put some more cell phones, but I feel like they're just going to be baking in the sun, so it's probably not the best place to put your phone. Now, let's go ahead and let's step into the second row, and then I'll talk about the third row, and then finally end off with the trunk, and we can get into the conclusions. Okay, stepping inside of the second row here. Very easy to get in and out of because of the side steps. That's definitely a must. Close that up. So I have plenty of leg room, headroom, all that good stuff. I mean, you can absolutely have like 6.5 feet tall adults in the front. That's not even remotely an issue. By the way, there's no sunroof with this model. Forgot to mention that. Something to note. You can get that in a higher trim level, but just not on this model. Anyway, back to the leg room. One of the good things is you can put the seat all the way back, and you have plenty of space now. You can recline the seat. Right, and I like the fact that there's actually some space underneath the front driver's seat. You can stow your toes, and you get some more space that way. But really, I don't need to have captain's chairs. I mean, just having the bench seat back here would have been ideal, and it would have been a better people carrier, in my opinion, but just something to note. We also have here USB, USB-C, or climate control right here in the back as well, which you can control. And 3-zone climate, that's actually standard with every Ford Expedition. If you got the base model, though, that would only be a 5-seater. And also, if you got higher trim levels of the Expedition, you can have entertainment screens in the back, and they have like HDMI connectivity. You have like this full-size house port, so you can genuinely have like a full-on console, like a video game console back here for kids to play with if you wanted to, but you know, it's on you. Obviously, this vehicle does not come with any of that stuff, nor do I think it's necessary. Also, we don't have any manual sunshades, as you can see. It would have been nice if this vehicle came with it, because I mean, come on, it's still 67 grand. You can get it on the higher trim levels, but I wish this XLT also came with it, because I feel like most families would buy this XLT model. But because we have the captain's chairs, right, you have this nice little pass-through. This vehicle is so wide, adults can just get up and move to the third row. But let me just put those third row seats up so I can test that out for you. Now, you can open up the trunk in a couple of different ways, from the key fob or from inside the vehicle, or you just press that button, whatever you want. So as you can see, the third row seats, they do lay flat electronically, so that's great. You have some space underneath here as well, not a lot. And obviously the full-size spare, that's underneath the vehicle. But here's the controls to put the seats up. So you press these 2 buttons for the rears, and actually I'll show you how to put these second row seats down. Press these 2 buttons. Very quick, very easy. These third row seats, they take a little bit more time. But even with the third row seats up, you still have some useful space back here, and this is not even the Expedition Max, so you don't necessarily need to get the Max. I think this is more than enough space for most people, as you can see. But since the third row seats are now up, let's go test them out. Just press that button to have that go down. And a couple of different ways to put this up. You just, well, that's the wrong lever, sorry, but still kind of slap that back. And let's go ahead and climb back there. So this second row seat is actually all the way back. And I'll put this up here. And I can absolutely sit back here. It's a little tight. My knees are definitely touching up against the second row seats. However, I'm a full-size adult. I'm 5'11". I can absolutely fit back here. Again, there's room for my toes down there, so absolutely children can sit here, no problems. Massive vehicle, no issues with space. You have some cup holders right here, USB, little tray, right? There you are. That's the space. Pretty easy, no big deal. And that's pretty good coverage of the interior. So is this all necessary? I mean, honestly, you can get yourself a Ford Explorer, which is a smaller vehicle, but it also has a lot of space. I mean, it's also a 3-row SUV. The only con to the Explorer is it can't tow as much as this Expedition. I think the Explorer only tows like 5,300 to 5,600 pounds. I can fit in the third row of an Explorer as well. It's a little bit more cramped, but it's not too terrible. It's a very practical machine. Besides, the third row is made for kids anyway, so that's something to consider. I mean, an Explorer is going to be smaller. It's going to get a little bit better gas mileage, and also other things to consider. The new Explorer for 2022, if you got a King Ranch, which is what I would recommend you getting, because the Explorer fully loaded with the twin turbocharged V6 is the way to go. It's such a pleasure to drive that. That vehicle is about 10 grand less than this XLT Expedition. So this isn't even fully loaded, yet the Explorer fully loaded is 10 grand less than this. Now, the biggest disadvantage with the Explorer, aside from the towing, is the fact that it has that stupid vertical screen, which I despise, but you can get used to it. It's not the end of the world, but at least this one has a 12-inch screen, so that's standard. You know, I just want to let you know the Explorer is a very enticing vehicle in the Ford lineup. It's very good. They've massively improved it for 2021 and 2022 compared to the 2020 I tested. I would really look into getting a new Explorer King Ranch, especially since the new King Ranch with that V6, it has the same power output as the ST, like the performance model ST. So you can get the King Ranch, get that power without sacrificing any of the ride quality. So that's one of the reasons why I'm pretty high on that vehicle. Plus, it's much cheaper than this. Up to you. Comment below why you would get an Expedition over the Explorer, but that's kind of my viewpoint on it. Let me know if you're an Expedition owner and you actually tow a lot with it. But for right now, this is a pretty good coverage of the interior. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into the conclusions. Okay, let's go ahead and let's wrap up this review on the 2022 Ford Expedition. I'm really impressed with the driving and the handling. Despite it being a massive tank of an SUV, it's so easy to operate on an everyday basis. It's easy to keep in its lane. It's not fatiguing to drive. In fact, it's extremely comfortable. It's got some great seats, all the technology. It's simple to use. You have physical buttons. You have buttons on the steering wheel. I mean, it's all great. It's all easy to access. No learning curve. It's nice. It's a great daily driver. Now, sure, there are some cons, like I mentioned. You know, the smaller bumps, you do feel them a little bit, and it causes the interior to creak and rattle, which I'm not a huge fan of. Essentially, they fixed that with the new F-150, the new Bronco. Even though those are also predominantly plastic interiors, they're really solid and kind of industrial feeling. So this Expedition sort of lacks that. That's where the Tahoe, in my opinion, really shines. New, nice, tight feeling interior space, a little bit more comfortable than this. Maybe it doesn't handle as well. I mean, it's close. I mean, the Tahoe is also a very impressive driving car, but there's something about the steering that I really like, which is surprisingly what everybody else complains about. This is something I really like and makes it very easy to drive, easier than the Tahoe, in my opinion, because of this very light steering. But it's also extremely stable at higher speeds, and obviously gobs of horsepower and torque. Really, the torque, it's colossal, and it just makes this car so effortless to pass people. The 10-speed is perfectly tuned now for the 2021/2022 Fords. Immense amount of space, and the towing is best in class, right? 9,300 pounds with the tow package. Very impressive. I hope people really take advantage of that. Plenty of safety features, which is standard actually, like the blind spot monitoring, the rear cross traffic alert. I really appreciate Ford making that stuff standard. Some of that trailer assistance, I think you get the blind spot with the trailer assistance, also a standard. There's some more advanced trailer safety features that you have to step up in trim level, but the basics are all here. The audio system isn't half bad. The seats are really comfortable. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to like here. And the reason why so many wealthy people consider the Tahoe and the Expedition is because, well, they have great resale value. They don't just drop like a rock, right? Unlike something like the Audi Q7s, the BMW X7s, they just, you know, crash in value. They're worthless after 3 years, and this is not. You know, you can kind of own this until the warranty is out and be happy with it, right? Now, I will say free maintenance is not included with the Expedition. That's something to keep in mind, but the powertrain warranty and everything else like that is pretty good, pretty long. I don't think you should have an issue with that. Personally, I like the appeal and the swagger of the Tahoe. That's kind of won me over, but, you know, that's on you. So I promised you at the beginning of this video, I'll show you a way on how you can save money on a new Ford product. Not just Fords, you can save money on other manufacturers as well. But since we're talking about Ford, I'll talk more in detail about that. So I have partnered with a company known as AutoCompanion. They're located in Washington, D.C. Essentially, they are a broker that has connections with multiple different dealerships in the Washington, D.C. area. And if you order through them, you can actually get between 4% to 8% off of a new Ford product. So for example, Ford F-150s, they are selling for 8% off MSRP. The Ford Explorer, I believe, is 7% off MSRP. Mavericks are 5% off MSRP. What else? I think the Mustangs are like 7% off. One other thing, surprisingly, they don't have the Expedition on their website. Apparently that's not, they don't have any deals going on for the Expedition, which is funny because that's the vehicle that I'm reviewing here. So I'm sorry, no deals on the Expedition, but you can probably get it at MSRP if you ask for it. So there is that. Either way, you're saving money and you're not paying over sticker price, at least. But the catch is you actually have to build the vehicle. You have to wait for it to be, built and shipped to the dealership. So that's something else to keep in mind. And also, they're located in Washington, D.C., so you either have to pick it up from D.C. or you have to have the vehicle shipped to you, which can cost anywhere between like $200 to maybe even thousands of dollars, like if you're in California or something. So that's one of the cons. And also, there is a broker fee, but if you sign up through my link, you can get 10% off of that broker fee. So if the broker fee is $500, which is typically the broker fee, you can get that broker fee down to $450 if you sign up with my link. If you want to save money on a new Ford and you don't want to pay over sticker price and you're willing to wait, I'll have all the information down in the description box. They also have Rams, like the Ram 1500 we got 12% off MSRP on that. They have Lexus, they have Volvos, Audi, BMW. So a lot of vehicles that you can choose from. I'll leave all that information down below. That's a full detailed look at the 2022 Expedition. If you want to see my full review on the Ford Explorer, then you can see that video on the end screen here. Click on it and I will see you there.